Okay, so I published a video yesterday about Elon Musk taking Tesla private. It has animations, it has soundtrack in it. It took me about 6 days to make. I think it's pretty good if you want to check it out. There's a link to it somewhere. But I wanted to try to make a video that covers some of the things that I didn't talk about in that video and not have it take 6 days to make. So I'm going to try to just make it in a day. There will be a lot less editing. So if you want a really polished piece, you should go check out that other video. I also haven't bought an onboard mic for this camera yet, so sorry for the audio. And I'll try to move. This is my backyard. I'll try to move around to keep it somewhat interesting. But the three things that I'm going to talk about in this video are: one, who is buying out Tesla, or who is helping take Musk? Who's helping Musk take Tesla private? Two, what actually is short selling? And three, why I'm virtually positive that Musk has to take Tesla private at $420 a share, or bad things will happen. Okay, so one, who's buying out Tesla? There have been a lot of reports that Saudi Arabia's sovereign fund, that Musk has had multiple conversations with the manager of the fund, and the fund manager has wanted to for a long time take Tesla private themselves. The reason that they most likely want to do this is because Saudi Arabia is heavily invested in oil, and I think they recognize that over time that is not a good investment that safeguards the future for them. Diversifying their portfolio into things like renewable energy is in their best interest.
Cicadas.
So basically, this is my dog Maisie. Juno. Basically, Musk released a blog update a few days ago, which I'll link somewhere around here, that gives an update as to why Musk said funding secured, which was basically that he's had these conversations with the fund manager of the Saudi Arabia Wealth Fund, Sovereign Wealth Fund. He's had conversations with his board, and his board has met without him and Kimball, his brother, who both excused themselves from meetings to make sure that there was no, issues of nepotism, and that he's currently talking to the largest shareholders in Tesla, institutional shareholders, to make sure that they would like to stay on, or if they have a capacity to stay on as private investors should Tesla go private. So some of those institutional investors are T. Rowe Price Associates, Fidelity Management and Research Company, Bailey Gifford and Co. Limited, Tencent Holdings. Saudi's Sovereign Wealth Fund has also basically quietly acquired 5% of the company. Hey, hello. Yes, you're cute. This is Maisie. She's a golden doodle. Yeah, Maisie, you want to say hi? Say hi. Hi. But basically, like I said in the last video, Musk's hoping that much of the shareholders that currently own Tesla as a public company will like to remain on if Tesla goes private, which would mean that they wouldn't have to raise $70 billion to buy everybody out. And he's also said that most of that is going to happen in equity and not debt, because obviously Tesla is already buried in debt. Okay, let's talk about... What was the other thing we wanted to talk about? Oh, short selling. So, short selling is when an investor wants to bet against the company. Most people, when they invest in companies, they believe in the company and they think that it will succeed in the long run. At some point in time in the future, the company will be more valuable, and the hope is that you might be able to either sell your share, or even owning it means that your net worth is higher because you own a piece of that company and the company is now worth more. When you bet against the company, you believe that the company is failing, that it won't do well. And so the way that works is that the investor goes to a broker and says, I want to borrow your share in X company. So say it's Apple. The short seller goes to the broker and says, lend me a share of Apple. Say Apple costs $200 per share. And the short seller believes that in a month it'll be worth $100 a share. For interest, obviously, because the broker it's not in their benefit to just give out their shares for nothing. So there's an interest. Say the short seller pays $205 for a share that's currently worth $200 to the broker. And they make an agreement that at X point in time, the short seller will give that share back to the original owner of the share. So as soon as that share is loaned to the short seller, that short seller sells it immediately. So if Apple stock is worth $200, they sell that Apple share for $200 and then hold on to that money. And the way the short seller makes money is if that share drops to $100, the short seller then buys it back at $100 to give back to the broker. And so now the broker still has their original share plus the interest that they earned from loaning the share out to the short seller, and the short seller has made $100. So that's their return on investment. Now, the reason short selling is so risky is because theoretically there is no limit to the amount that you stand to lose with short selling. So for instance, if you decide that you want to short a stock and that stock each share is currently worth $1. Theoretically, if that share bounces to $1 million, you are at a loss of $1 million. So usually what happens with short selling is that there's a clause that says that once a share reaches a certain value, it automatically triggers a buy, so that you're not out $1 million. A short squeeze is when there's so many short sellers that are betting against the stock, and this is what's happening with Tesla. That if that number were to trigger, it would trigger all of the short sellers at once, and you can't execute that buyback in time to get it at that price. So if everyone's selling a stock at once, it would send Tesla skyrocketing upwards. And that's what's called a short squeeze. Man, it's really hard to talk about these things when you don't have a script. This is one of the reasons that it makes a lot of sense for Tesla to go private, because if this were to happen, this would artificially inflate the Tesla's stock price. If all of the short sellers were to execute their short. You're in the frame, dog. Doge. Her name is Juno, and she's a sheepadoodle. You want to say hi? Come up here. Oh, my mom. The reason Musk basically has to take Tesla private at $420 a share now is because he made this announcement on Twitter, and if it turns out that for whatever reason it falls through, Musk is liable for the SEC to come after him and really question what his intents were when he posted that tweet. Intention is hard to prove, and Musk, I'm sure, has a killer legal staff, so I guess there isn't too much to be worried about there. But yeah, I guess I didn't really have much to say on this third point. Yeah, just watch my other video. It's better. Okay, that's about it. I know this video probably wasn't very helpful for a lot of you, so sorry for wasting your time. But maybe it was for somebody. There is one last thing that I wanted to do. So I wrote this to put at the end of the last video. I'll wait until the cicadas stop screaming. But I just thought that it was better to end the video. It was already 10 minutes and I didn't want it to drag on for too much longer. But I wanted to read it because I realized that, well, okay, anyway. I may come off as a Musk idolizer, and I'll own that to some degree. But there are for sure things that Musk does that make me a little uneasy. Specifically, he has a tendency to behave somewhat Trumpian in particular situations. And I think we could do with a little less of that in 2018. Obviously, Musk and Trump are analogous in few meaningful ways, but both are notorious for their Twitter outbursts, and both have a complicated relationship with the media. #Pravda. Just something to think about. I admire Musk for a lot of reasons. He's a leader, but he's also an engineer, and he knows a lot of the physics, basically the dirty work of his company. And I think most CEOs in his position don't necessarily work on the ground floor, sleep in the factory, all of the things that Musk does, which I think it makes him a great leader, but also it's just really impressive that he has that capacity. That being said, you in a position like he's in, you gotta have a thick skin. So I understand things can build up and you can get frustrated by the media when they do all the things that media does. But in general, I think it's better to keep a level head and stay on course and not, freak out. Which is also why I think his last Q2 earnings call was so interesting, because it's plausible and probably likely that he behaved well on that conference call to try to raise Tesla's stock price so that he could negotiate a higher buyout rate, the 420 that he's referenced. So maybe the SEC should be going after him for his level-headed earnings call instead of his tweet. Just thought that was funny. All right, here's a time lapse.